So today we're talking about how to heal the suppressed feminine energy in all of us, the wounded feminine. And this is for all genders. This isn't just for women, because we all have masculine and feminine energy within us. It's not even that we have it within us. When you take us as a whole, half of us, if we're in balance, is acting in the masculine energy and half of us is acting in the feminine. And these are dancing together, which create our dynamic life. But unfortunately, we've lived in a very strange world for a long time. Centuries, millennia. And we call it the patriarchal energy or the dominating energy of the world. And what that means is almost systemically, the masculine energies has suppressed or oppressed or repressed the feminine. And I don't know why. I have no, I'm sure we could theorize as to what that's all about. But the bottom line is, what it looks like, and it has looked like men oppressing women. It has looked like authorities oppressing followers or constituents or people so it's happened everywhere. It's happened where you have the head of the household and anything can happen to the children or the wives or whatever. But today we're talking about what happens within us. What happens when we oppress the feminine within ourselves? And of course, it often begins outside of us. For example, we have been told that emotions are weakness. You're so emotional. You're so sensitive. What's wrong with you? So emotions are weakness. In all genders, to be really clear, that intuition is nonsense. Nonsense. You can't prove it. How can you know that? Nonsense. You must be crazy. And because that masculine energy has oppressed it in separation from it, it's sort of like logic rules. The law rules. This is what rules. Intuition? You must be a witch. How could you know that? What kind of magic are you tapping into? Wildness. Wildness must be tamed. This is your savage self, your lowest self. You can't have this wildness within you, right? And wisdom. The feminine wisdom in each of us comes from deep within. It could be the wisdom of the body, that when the body is sick, to not treat it like a meat suit with some random infection. Sometimes that's what we need. We do need something like antibiotics or something. But when there's something chronic and interesting happening, what if there's actually wisdom in the body talking to us? But we've been trained that all knowledge, all wisdom comes from the experts, comes from those people out there, the learned ones, the ones in authority. They are the ones that will tell us what's right or wrong and knowledge and all that. So now what's left of the human? When all of that is gone, when your emotional response to the world is gone, your intuition that whispers the truth to you is gone, your wildness, your connection to your foundational self, your instinctual self is gone, and you are believed to have no inner wisdom until you have gone to university or until you have, whatever. What's left of us, really? What happens there is that we suddenly have no ability to navigate our soul's path. We have no idea why. Why was I even born? What am I supposed to be doing with my life? I have no purpose here. Right? How often do we lack purpose in life? We seek meaning. We seek fitting in. How often do we struggle to fit in and we say, I just can't find my community. I can't find people who understand me. I want to be around people of like mind, and so that I can have these conversations and go deeper within me. But this oppression of the feminine inside of us has completely stripped us of our uniqueness and what we actually bring to the table, what we actually bring to our own lives, to the community, to our families, to our relationships. So then all of a sudden, we have reactions to that. Reactions to having to somehow depend on other people to tell us how we should be living and what we should be doing. And we internalize the judgments of others. And we believe that we can't do the things we really want to do. So suddenly, we have all of these strange issues. We have anxiety, depression, and lack of self-worth, and lack of self-love. And we believe that we can't do the things we want to do. But none of it's true. Like, these are just reactions to this very strange world we've lived in and we've experienced. It's not all in our head. It's real. It's very similar to if you were to imagine a lion in a cage. Now, a lion is not designed to be in a cage. A lion is a multidimensional being that has a million interesting instincts and natural habits that fit the territory that it was born in or meant to be raised in and live. So all of a sudden, you take that animal, you take that lion, you put it in a cage. And now the lion will probably develop some weird behaviors. It'll probably attack when it normally wouldn't because it wouldn't care. It might act in all kinds of ways. It might develop rashes. It might develop all kinds of weird things. Now, let's say, for example, we're looking at this lion. We're sitting outside with our notebook, making notes about the behaviors of lions. Aha! Lions tend to do this when approached. Lions tend to do this when they're eating. Lions tend to do this when they copulate to make new lions. And we're making all these notes. How many of those notes are accurate? None, maybe? Like, the actions of a lion in a cage aren't even close to how a lion would act in the wild. Truthfully, we don't actually know at all how a lion would act in the wild watching him in a cage. Right? We are the same. We are that lion in a cage that has been stripped of all of its wildness and instinct and intuition and emotional responses or anything. You can no longer take any action based on how you feel. If you don't like where it is, you would just leave in the wild. You would go find better hunting ground or better places for shelter. You would just leave. But you're in a cage and you can't. So you're going to develop coping mechanisms to do that, to survive. So very often, if we come back to that example that here's this person out here with a little notebook making notes about how a lion behaves, and we start thinking that the lion, this is intrinsic to the lion, right? We do that to ourselves. We sit with this external mind and we look at ourselves in the mirror and we go, look at me, and look at all these crazy behaviors I have, and look at all these illnesses I have, and look at all these problems I have. That must be who I am. I act this way because I am so messed up, or I have no self-worth because look at how messed up I am. Look at all this. But that's not who you are. That's not who any of us are, right? It has nothing to do with our true nature. And the reason this is interesting is because as soon as we identify with all of those coping mechanisms from living in a cage, if we identify with it, we are powerless. We think we are in that cage. We think we can't do anything. But as soon as we recognize that, oh, these are just behaviors and philosophies and ideas because of the cage I've lived in. Interesting. So that would mean, logically, that if I am not in the cage, I get to revert back to who I really am. And I get to become my true self, my true authentic self. But we have to come to that place and recognize the cage. Because the reality is, when we were young, when we were little 30-pound beings and 50-pound beings and 80-pound beings, and we were being cared for by people who were 150 pounds, 200 pounds, bigger and stronger and everything else. And we were young and we couldn't defend ourselves in the world. It takes a long time for a human to become, able to make its own way in the world. Perhaps we lived in a cage. Perhaps we were limited by the belief systems of our families, by the education system we lived within, the church we were a part of, the family dynamic, the whole family, not just our nuclear family, but perhaps the whole family. Or maybe we didn't even have that and we were in foster care, or we had something else happen. And so within that situation, we're having all kinds of very real experiences at the hands of our handlers and at the hands of other caged lions. We can call them siblings. Or teachers, or kids in the schoolyard, or colleagues at work, or whatever. But for all intents and purposes, our whole experience is in this weird cage. So the funny thing about the difference between us and that lion in the cage is that once we are an adult, we're not in the cage anymore. We are actually free. But now the cage exists in our mind. We believe the cage still because we think it's real. It's like the story of how they train elephants. And I'm not going to go into detail because I don't like this story, but that if you take a baby elephant and you put a big chain around its neck, the baby elephant won't fight against the chain because this chain's stronger than that. And it kind of continues this way until the elephant is its full 2,000, 3,000 pounds, and you can lead it around by a rope, right? Because it's long forgotten to fight against the chain. It has no idea how strong and powerful it is. So, of course, why don't I like this story, right? Does it just appeal to my animal lover inside that just, oh, how cruel, it's so wrong? Or do I highly identify with that little elephant? Do we all identify with that little elephant that will tell you over and over again, but you don't understand. I can't. I'm telling you, I can't. I know this. I've had experience. You wouldn't believe everything I've experienced has told me up until this point that I can't. It's cruel to every one of us to believe we can't, to believe those cages of our families of origin, of those school systems, even of the societies we were raised in. It's cruel to us to believe that. And so this is the point of our chat today, to really try to look at where we were told, almost like if we could define the cage and find the parts of us that we forgot about, to remember the power of the elephant that we all are, because we are, So let's look at something like anxiety. So sometimes we have anxiety because we really had difficult childhoods, right? We were kind of always waiting for the other shoe to drop. You never knew when somebody, whoever, parents, siblings, who knows, caregivers of some flavor, you never knew when something bad was going to happen. So your nervous system ends up in constant, awareness, hyper awareness. This is real, right? This is a real thing that would take us hours and maybe years to unpack all that, which many of us do in counseling and all kinds of great things. But sometimes the most important thing is to actually come into our bodies in 2025, right? Because we are taught, like we live in our heads, especially when we've suffered a lot of trauma. We leave our bodies where the pain is and the fear is, and we come into our heads and we kind of escape it. There's really something about actually coming back into the body and knowing, okay, I'm 56 years old, it's 2025, and none of that is happening right now. And actually being in the body. This is the feminine. The feminine in all of us is reality. It is the manifest self right now. The mind, in this case, the body is the feminine and the mind is the masculine. There's nothing wrong with the masculine, but the masculine and the feminine have to talk to each other. They have to trust each other. But in what happens is, especially if we've had difficulty, they get separated. And we need to bring them back together. And this is where we sit in our bodies and say, it's 2025. This is my actual situation. And the mind has to listen, right? And again, I am way oversimplifying getting over childhood trauma. Like, I'm not even pretending I'm even scratching the surface. So just so you know. But I just wanted to say that as an example of the power of coming into our feminine and even healing all of it, right? But what we often experience, even if we haven't had childhood trauma, is we have decision anxiety. And this has sort of been normalized, right? That, oh, well, yeah, I mean, it's so hard to make decisions, right? I mean, you just don't know. And this is what we really want to talk about, right? What have we normalized, which isn't normal, right? In the same way that that person looking in the lion's cage, oh, it's normal for a lion to act this way. That's where the danger is. What if decision anxiety isn't normal? What if that's not normal at all? So what are the three things, and there's maybe many more, that contribute to decision anxiety? One, we don't trust our intuition. Two, we're afraid that things won't go as planned. And three, we're afraid of what other people will think. So trusting our intuition is interesting because, again, we've been raised in a world where logic rules. Spreadsheets, prove it to me, give me the plan, this is what rules. Intuition is this other wisdom within that says, turn left. When all logic says to turn right, and you turn left, and something new and interesting happens. And suddenly life becomes interesting. Because you're not doing the robotic thing. You're not doing it according to the plan. You're doing it according to your soul's plan. And your soul needed to turn left in that moment. Could it be proven in a court of law why that was a good idea? No. But the intuition's real. Intuition is powerful, right? It's kind of like our brain. So for me, I've always loved my brain. I was, school, I was one of those kids that school was easy for me. Mostly because the education system was designed by people who have the same kind of brain as I do. So suddenly, oh, look, I'm an A student because a whole pile of people just like me created the education system. Whereas if someone who created the education system who had a completely different learning style, I might not have been an A student. But I do have that kind of logical mind. I studied mathematics, was a computer programmer. I have that. So for me, my logical mind has all the answers, And so years ago, when I was 29, I was sick. I had breast lumps. My mom had just died of breast cancer. it was a very, very scary time. And I met my teacher, my spiritual teacher. He, appeared out of nowhere. And one of the things he taught me, he says, you have got to start listening to your heart. You have to learn, he said, you have to learn to shut off your mind and only listen to your heart. Well, according to everything I'd ever learned in school, by people, both my parents were teachers, if I shut off my brain, what would be left of me? How could I ever make a good decision ever again? So it was really hard, but luckily when you're afraid to die, you'll try almost anything. And he said, when you listen within, if someone asks you a question, so this is back in the day when we had the phone on the wall, right? And someone would call and they would say, can you, I don't know, bring a dozen cookies to the bake sale, because my kids were in school. And I'd have to listen within to my heart. Did my heart lift or did it fall? And that's all I needed to know, yes or no. Did my heart lift or did it fall? And he goes, I don't really care what you do with it, but you have to start listening. You have to start listening to your intuition. And this is just, and it's that simple. The mind wants to make it very complicated, but it truly is that simple. And you can practice it in very small ways, like even silly things, like you're going for a drive or you're driving to the grocery store. Let your intuition guide you. Maybe you go on a different route than you normally go. We often go on the most efficient route. But what if you just simply say something, you come up to a stop sign and you kind of go inside and you go left or right, and there's something inside that you can hear, and everybody's different. You hear left. So you turn left and you keep going and you kind of listen and you just play the game in a place that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether it takes 5 minutes longer to get to the grocery store. Just play. Because all you're doing is developing the muscle of intuition. That's all you're doing. You're just developing it in a place where it doesn't matter. So then all of a sudden, later on, you're sitting there and something big is going on. Maybe you're having a hard conversation with someone and you really do have a vested interest in how this is going to go, right? So now all of a sudden you're sitting there and you want to talk to this person, you want to say the right thing. You want to, you want this to go well. You want them to be okay. And you close your eyes and you're kind of like, do I say this or do I say that? And now all of a sudden you have a muscle inside to be able to discern this one, say this one. And then you do it. And the conversation goes in an entirely new place that you never imagined. And once that's happened, we start to tap into the power of intuition. It's not nonsense at all. It's how we access deep wisdom. It's how we access the true matrix of the universe. All the dimensions, all the karma, all the everything. And every time we do it, it gets a little stronger. But for reasonable reasons, I'm missing the proper adjective there, it can't be figured out with the brain. We have to actually do it. We have to actually listen to an entirely different organ, our heart, and then take action and do the experiment. And then suddenly, when we need to make a decision, we start to recognize, oh, there's weight on this option versus that one. That doesn't feel like it has any roots. Interesting. Okay. And suddenly we then have the faith, call it whatever, to go, you know what? I'm willing to put my money behind it, my interest, my attention behind that, because I trust my intuition. So then, what about the fear of things not going as planned? This is such a funny thing, that we have any idea what success is. Often it's completely tied to money, which makes sense, right? You want to start a new business and you have bills to pay, it makes sense. But again, this is this head's version of success. It's not even about the body or the mind. Body. It's funny, in Chinese medicine, mind isn't the brain. Mind is like this whole wisdom of the being. It's a very different concept. Yesterday I was talking to a friend and, we were kind of doing this. So, how was your day? And they said, it's weird. Like I didn't get done what I wanted to get done. They really wanted to clean out their freezer and they wanted to do all these things around the house. And they said, but it was such a fun day. In the morning I went to the gym and I did this and I did that. And then my friend called that I haven't talked to in so long and we had the most beautiful conversation. And then my kids came home and we all cooked food and it was really great. And then later someone else called and we had such a great time. And then I had a hot tub and it was just wonderful. And I just feel so good. Like my heart's just so full. I wish I had gotten done the things that I wanted to get done. I thought, isn't that funny? Like, isn't that funny how our head decides what a successful day is? And that somehow it's a successful day because I got to the chores that I had written down on a piece of paper, as opposed to all the beautiful things and the experiences you might have had that day. Isn't that curious? It's almost like, again, we're putting all this emphasis on the brain. I made a to-do list and I've created a structure for the day. And if I get through that structure in optimal time and in the most efficient way, then today is a success. Right? It's like, or we go down into the feminine, into the emotions, into the earth, the real self. And we're like, wow, I was so nurtured today. Isn't that funny? So it's the same thing that when we want to make a decision about something, how do we possibly judge whether something was a success or a failure? Years ago, back in 2005, I opened a dance studio with a man. He was an amazing dancer. And I was very, very shy. And I was going to be the business side of things, right? My mathematical self. He was going to be the dancer, the teacher. Well, he had some self-sabotage issues. And slowly stopped teaching more and more and more. And I was the only one that had actually invested any money in this business. And so obviously really the only person that had any skin in the game. So I was forced to start teaching dance. I had horrible self-body image. I was very shy. I would actually flush red if someone looked at me. And I would become so shy, like right down to my collarbone. I'd just be like this red beet. But now I had invested, $30,000 in this dance studio, and the dance teacher wasn't showing up. So somebody had to be there. So I started teaching. And of course, because we were struggling, I didn't take a wage, all that kind of thing. But, it takes time for a business to get started. And this is what I would tell myself. For years after that studio closed, I told myself, it just was so financially, it was just so it was such a failure. I just couldn't make it work or whatever. But the crazy thing is, that's when I discovered that I love teaching. That's where I broke through all of my shadow fears and realized that I could stand up in front of a group of people and teach something. And when that closed, I was home and I discovered Kundalini Yoga. And I went away and I did my teacher training. And that kind of launched, a couple decades of becoming a teacher. Was it a success? Was that dance studio a success or a failure? Right? Well, you don't know. You don't know until you do it. You walk through it and you come out the other side and go, wow, I found community and I became a teacher. And yeah, I had to go through the fire to do it, but maybe I had to go through the fire to do it. So it's an interesting thing when we can trust that. It's almost like we trust the wildness of life. Could I have seen this on a spreadsheet? Could I have seen this on a 5-year plan? No. But the wildness, the ecosystem that is Katrina knew what was going on somehow. And it nurtured and fed all these parts of me. So the truth is, when we're struggling and we have anxiety around making decisions, to wonder whether or not it's going to work or not, that's assuming we have any idea what success would even look like for our soul. You know? So it's just interesting to kind of go, you know what? My soul's journey really is paramount. At the end of it all, that's what we're going to remember. Money comes and goes, truly does. But what we experience on a soul level, wow, that stays with us forever, and it compounds and it does so many interesting things. And then the last thing is this idea that we're afraid of what other people might think, which is so interesting. And don't get me wrong, I am heavily, this has been a huge part of my life. In Tantra, the belief is that we began with Shiva Shakti, oneness, God, Brahman. In order to create duality, and all of us here, Shiva Shakti separates into Shiva and Shakti. Shiva remains pure consciousness, and Shakti, as they separate, Shakti becomes manifest divinity. So what's interesting is we are Shakti. Every one of us is incarnate divinity. We are divinity in physical form. That is Shakti. So if you imagine the infinite aspects of God, Brahman, the unknown, source, spirit, whatever you want to call it, and you think of the infinite combinations of that energy that could be manifest here on earth, right? We'll just stick with earth for now. Of course we're all different. Of course we're all unique. Of course we have completely different paths. How could someone look into your life and say, wow, that was a failure, or I wouldn't have done that, or whatever? Each one of us is an absolutely unique manifestation of God. Like every one of us, like every single one of us is this amazing multidimensional being walking around in physical form on some kind of soul's journey. How this fits into the oppressed feminine is that Shakti, in every one of us, male or female, in every one of us, this is who you are. This is your manifest self. This is your absolutely unique self. But we've been taught to oppress that for the sake of whatever the fashion is, whatever our schools taught us success was, whatever our parents thought success was, whatever our churches thought success, spiritual success was. You don't want to go around being this unique person. You don't have a unique perspective on the world. This is the truth. This is what success looks like. This is the right way to live. That's the wrong way to live. This is the right way to live. When we have this kind of thinking, we are essentially oppressing Shakti. We are oppressing our very reality here on earth. Like, it sounds kind of crazy, right? Because nobody can ever know. Even we struggle to know what's going on in our life. Like, am I on the right path? Is this crazy? Like, what am I thinking? You know what I mean? How could somebody else look? Because theoretically, they have their own absolutely unique perspective on the world. And if they're actually living their unique perspective, they wouldn't even look at you because they know that it's so unique. But it kind of comes back to the caged lion problem. that they're caged lions too. And maybe they're not living their authentic life. And they're living the life that they were told they should live. And they're living within the cage in their mind. And they are pissed off that you might be escaping the cage. So they're going to fight and make you feel bad about it so that you get back into the cage, so that they can continue to believe that they're stuck in a cage. Right? So now all of a sudden, let's imagine you want to make a decision and you trust your intuition. What other people think doesn't matter because you honor the Shakti in all people. And you're willing to kind of play with whatever happens no matter what. Well, suddenly, there's no decision anxiety. There's excitement. Wow, this is pretty exciting. Like, I have a lot of ideas and I'm pretty excited about this, to be honest. This is, and will it work? I don't know. But I've got to take the first step. So like the normalization of anxiety around decisions is weird when you really think of it outside of the cage. It doesn't make any sense. Inside the cage, for sure. Outside the cage, it's like, world's my oyster. Let's see. So if we look at these 4 aspects, emotions, intuition, wildness, and wisdom, what do we really want to do going forward? Right? Because I think we can talk about all of these for whole hours all unto themselves, which perhaps I will do. But for now, what do? Let's look at emotions. So how can we start to honor the emotions inside of us so first, what happens when we deny our emotions? Right? I feel this way. Well, you shouldn't feel this way. Don't feel this way, but I do. You can't to say, it's not raining out is actually nonsense. And it makes us feel crazy inside. If you're telling me, I want you to believe that it's not raining out right now, you kind of are like, well, then I don't even know what to think about anything. And so suddenly we're perpetually confused because I feel this way, but I'm not supposed to feel this way. So suddenly nothing makes sense in the world. But the first thing we have to do is value the emotions and say, these emotions are guiding us. Our emotions are our interface with the outside world. It's kind of like you go outside and it's cold out and we feel cold. So we go, I need to go back in and get a jacket. I go back in and I get a jacket. I come back out. Now I'm fine. Right? This is the beautiful balance of the masculine and feminine. The feminine feels cold. The masculine goes and gets a jacket. Now, what if every time you feel cold, you're like, I don't need a jacket. It's okay. It's just too, I don't want to go get my jacket. So now we walk around freezing all the time, right? And we're just like so cold. And then someone asks you a question and you're just like, don't bug me. I'm so cold. I can't even think. I'm so cold. And someone else wants you to do something like, I can't even think about that. I'm so cold. But if we really honored it to begin with, we would have just gone and gotten a jacket. And then we'd be back to homeostasis. So now what about something happens and you feel sad? Someone says something to you and you instantly feel sad. Well, we've been taught that you're not supposed to feel sad. Or maybe you don't want this person to know you feel sad because you're attached to them thinking or feeling or being with you or who knows what. So you just silently suffer with the sadness. And you slowly feel more distant from them. And you slowly realize that you don't even count in life. You don't even matter, right? And you just sort of live in this sadness. But what if instead you really valued the sadness and you said, wow, when they talk to me like that, I just feel so sad. And imagine we looked at that and we said, this is really important. This is really important. The feminine is very important. It's so wise. So we say to our partner, parent, child, colleague, whoever, and we say, I don't know what it is about this conversation, but it makes me feel incredibly sad. And maybe they go off and they're like, oh, well, you shouldn't be thinking that. And you have to just reframe this. And let's just put a different spin on this and blah, blah. And you're looking because you deeply respect emotions, because you know that they're tapping into something deeper. And you look within and you're looking at this other person thinking, so you don't honor emotions. You think you can actually think your way out of things. Weird. Right? You don't internalize it. You don't oppress it yourself because they're going to oppress it. You just sort of go, that's interesting. Like we talk a lot about emotional intelligence, EQ, right? And it's like, it's very interesting when you just sort of realize yourself that this is really important. But this other person, for whatever reason, and maybe because they grew up in a similar cage that you did, that they don't listen to their emotions. It's probably harming them in all kinds of aspects of their lives. But you don't internalize it. You kind of go, okay, well, obviously you're not the one I need to talk to about this. I'll go talk to someone else about it, and because I need to make change. My masculine needs to do something with this, right? I'm feeling something. I need to get the metaphorical coat, whatever that is, to sort it. Or maybe something happens and you get really angry and you go, wow, I'm so angry. This is important, right? This is important. I need to give my masculine something to do with this, to make some changes, to set up some boundaries, to do stuff, right? It's this, suddenly the masculine knows what to do because it's listening to the emotions. And as soon as that happens, we get to live in peace, right? If we don't listen to our emotions, are we even here? Are we even existing? Are we even alive? Like you can imagine how this simple act of denying our emotions makes us feel like we don't belong here. Like we came to Earth well equipped with emotional wisdom. To deny it makes us wonder why we're here, So, and this, of course, leads into intuition. These are all deeply connected. To be able to follow our intuition in life. So here you are, this soul incarnate on earth, and you're walking around. The likelihood is your intuition will say, I feel like I need to go this way. And someone might say, well, how do you know? And you're like, I don't know. I can't explain it to you with my mind, but my body, my soul, my being knows. And there's really something about honoring that. That's all it takes. It's not how do I describe it? How do I explain it? Nothing like that. As soon as we believe that our intuition is guiding our soul's path, no one can talk us out of it, right? It's only us when it comes right down to it, And it's kind of that whole thing, we come in alone and we go out alone. Bottom line, we meet all kinds of people on the journey. But it's this soul who's going right or going left. Always. It has nothing to do with anyone else. And if we think it's someone else telling us that, oh, well, you're crazy or that you can't listen to that and you don't really know about, if someone else, if that's the story we're telling ourselves, well, but this person's going to, then we have internalized that voice and we are doing that to ourselves. We are telling ourselves that we're not smart enough. We don't know. You can't trust your intuition. Like we are doing that to ourselves. And it's really important to know, not for some weird self-blame thing, but just to know that we have all the power. We have all the power. We are not in the cage. We may have to meditate. We may have to do yoga. We may need to journal. We may need to get our running shoes on and run as fast as we can for 10 miles. To get all this frustration out of our bodies. Who knows what you need to do? But you need to do something to move this wheel, to really, really get that you're not in the cage anymore. We need to deeply honor our wildness and to understand that our wildness is our first chakra wisdom, right? And if you're not familiar with chakras, if you imagine you as an energy being, right? And in the top, you are kind of this seventh, you are like pure energy, pure galactic consciousness. And down where you are sitting right now, right? Right at the bottom of your spine, you are pure earth, pure manifest person. And all the chakras in between are some beautiful flow from pure physicality in the first chakra all the way up to the pure galactic consciousness in the seventh. Every single one of us is that beautiful journey. When we deny our wildness, when we deny our instincts, when we deny that innate nature in the first chakra, we literally don't have a leg to stand on. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make any sense. But we have this idea that we've been taught through religion, mostly religion, that everything down there is very dangerous, savage. You have all these instincts. But of course, it's very hard to control people who are listening to their instincts. And so they're told, don't go there, so dangerous. You always have to wonder, when people are telling you that you shouldn't do something, it's like, why? What's in it for you if I don't do that? It's just very important to note. So really deeply loving your wild self. And wild doesn't mean like crazy. Wild means that lion in the jungle, or the horse on the meadow. They're just being a horse. They're just being a lion. Who are you really? Who are you in your natural habitat without any of these weird cages? Just be that. Sometimes you might be sitting with someone, or you meet someone at a party, and someone says, oh, you got to meet my friend Frank, and you walk up to Frank and every cell of your body goes, oh, like, I don't know why, but I don't want to be anywhere near Frank. This is our amoebic response. Like an amoeba, a single-celled amoeba, will actually move towards food, towards what is nourishing, and will run away from what is dangerous. A single-celled amoeba knows to go towards what is nourishing and run away from what's dangerous. We need to reconnect with our single-celled amoeba. And if something doesn't feel good, if a situation doesn't feel good, we have to honor that as deep wisdom. That all you know is, for whatever reason, I shouldn't be here right now. You don't have to psychoanalyze the person and say, oh, well, probably Frank must have. You don't have to do that. You have to be the single-celled amoeba and just leave. That's what the wild would do. The wild isn't going to get all intellectual about it. They're just going to leave, right? Or in vice versa, you see this person over there and every cell of your body's like, I don't know why, but I've got to move towards that person over there. And I don't mean something sexual or weird. I just mean there is something about them that is just drawing me that way. And you just do it. And again, to not be heady about it and go over and say, I don't know why, but I just keep feeling like we're supposed to talk tonight. And inevitably, almost always, something really cool happens. That's just connecting with our wildness, right? And the last thing I want to mention is we have to connect with our inner wisdom. Every single one of us, right here, right now. You do not have to be enlightened. You do not have to be years down a spiritual path. You do not have to have a degree or have accomplished whatever in life. We are born with wisdom. We are born with knowledge. And we are born at least with the knowledge that we need for our assignment, for our path. We may not have knowledge about what that person needs or what that person needs or whatever, but I do have the wisdom to guide my own soul, every single one of us. And that's interesting. And it's important because what happens is when I believe that, I actually start to ask myself, what should I do next? Right? I start having a communication with my soul before I even talk to other people. Now, if we're not used to listening within to our wisdom, it's quite a dance to get started, right? Because what if if you say, oh, well, I listen within, but the truth is it's my crazy inner child responding, and how do I know if it's my inner child responding? Or what if it's just that I'm angry, or what if I'm triggered, or what if I'm actually, my inner wisdom is actually simply the opinions of my mother? You know, how do I know? How do I know, right? Well, this is the journey of really developing our connection to our wisdom. And then we start asking within, and we're like, is it this? Is it that? And then you find your tool to access your truth. Maybe it's journaling. Maybe it's dance. Maybe it's running. Maybe it's meditation. Maybe it's yoga. Maybe you're a verbal processor. For me, I'm very verbal. And when I talk about things, it's like I might say something and I go, wow, that's not even true. Or someone else says something and I'm like, that doesn't sound right. And so we just find the way to access our inner wisdom. And it's not overnight. We develop this over time. But bit by bit, we start to recognize, just like recognizing our intuition, we go, I do know this. And someone says, well, how do you know that? How do you know that that's right? And you're like, I just do. And that's it. It's my life. And then my masculine goes out and manifests it. Based on, that's what gives our masculine so much power and conviction, because my masculine loves my feminine. My masculine honors my wisdom, my wildness, my intuition, my emotions. And that's how we feel whole. Because our masculine feels so powerful, because we so deeply trust our feminine. So thank you so much for being here, and I hope you have a wonderful day.